Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.
So do I have to get you your own chair here?
I feel like it's about time. I feel like we can put something over here. This is my, fifth time? So,
I think fifth or sixth.
Yeah, it's a pleasure every time, man.
Always a hoot, my friend.
Absolutely.
Always a good time. Okay, so since we've last reconvened, I did not watch the presidential debate. I'm probably guessing with your curious mind, you probably did.
I watched what was called a debate. Yes, I did watch it.
Would you like to reclassify that event?
It was. I mean, look, politics aside, it was a complete shit show.
Right.
And here's the problem. It was neither candidate put forth their vision for America. It was all about the history of what they did or didn't do. And
we already know that.
We know that. I wanted those two men, regardless of who you vote for, both of those men had a chance to tell the American people what putting them in office for the next 4 years will do for the American people. Neither candidate did that. I walked away from that like, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen in the next 4 years. And that was frustrating. And there was a lot of animosity. It was intense. It was fierce. The moderator was, he was trying to moderate, if you would call it moderating.
Wallace, right? Chris Wallace.
Yeah. I mean, and look, there's people complain about the way he handled it and, interrupted Trump more than Biden. But regardless, it just wasn't presidential in any way, shape, or form. And it's completely frustrating because I thought it was, okay, this is the one chance we get to hear both of these men set forth their vision for America. That's what we need. We need the vision, not the history, the vision of what the next 4 years will look like. I have no idea what that is. And that's a problem. I mean, we're, 4 weeks away from the election. And right now, I mean, I know who I'll vote for based upon what I know right now. But if there was any chance to swing me or swing anybody, I think that was a missed opportunity.
That was a huge missed opportunity on multiple levels.
100%. The one thing I will say, and we've talked about my political affiliations in the past. I lean more in the middle, but swing conservative. I will give Joe Biden credit. Like, I did feel he took the opportunity to actually talk to the American people, or he at least tried to. He would speak to the camera and talk to the people. Now, he wasn't setting forth his vision. He was just encouraging them to go vote and encouraging them to do things. But he did talk to the people. He tried to. Trump missed that opportunity. Trump, because I like to watch people speak. He was either looking at Wallace or looking at Biden the whole time. He never once in that debate, in that 90 minutes, addressed the American people. Right. He never once looked at the camera and said, I'm here to help you. I want to include all of you. I want to do this for us, the country. It was about Biden's record, what he did, the radical left, and it came across very intense and with a ton of animosity. And I get that he's been under attack for 4 years. I understand.
It came across like he's on defensive. And, even when you are on defensive, the last thing you want to do is come across as you are. Right. You're an attorney.
Yeah,
you don't give that away.
No, you need a poker face. You need and there were multiple times, because look, people talk about Biden's mental state. There were many times I thought if Trump was going to try and win that debate, just shut up. Like, you could see it in Biden's face. There was a couple of times he was going to go off the rails.
Right.
But then when you interrupt him, he just got his composure.
Well, sure, they gave him a space.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't give a guy space like that.
No one won that debate. And it was just, and my concern is, will there be another one? I don't know.
Which leads me to we don't usually do current events on here, but this morning last night they said,
like late last night or early this morning, I guess it would be.
Trump and the First Lady, President Trump and the First Lady, have both tested positive.
Yeah. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, they because I guess his aide, that Hope Hicks, she had tested positive and was having some symptoms, I guess, and she traveled with him over the past week and a half. And he made an announcement on Twitter that he and Melania both tested positive. And you feel and you hope a speedy recovery.
Right.
He is the president and the First Lady, and you want to see, but the stuff that's going on social media and in the media is just complete, utter bullshit.
It is. It's classless.
100%.
I mean, there's always like that point, Rocco, where I think we'll go up to a certain point, we won't cross that fucking line.
Oh yeah, we crossed it.
There is no line. There are no lines anymore.
No.
I mean, I just don't. I don't get it. Like and conversely, we chatted off air that had this been, Senator Biden had he been diagnosed, Trump in that camp would have been vicious right on him too. So it would have went both directions.
Yeah. Right now, there's a big lack of empathy. Regardless of whether you like Trump or hate Trump or the first lady, you should never wish ill will upon anybody. And the people, and I've looked at celebrities and very public figures on Twitter, hoping he dies, and to me that's just rude and it's uncalled for at this point. We're already divided enough as a country, and to say shit like that doesn't help. And it would happen on the other side as well. So let's just be honest.
There's no question.
100% happen on both sides. We as a people need to become better. And we need more empathy. We need more kindness. We need to be able to have discussions without this animosity. And when I saw that happen, when I was in my office before I came here, I read an article that went through all of the terrible tweets that have went out about the president. And I'm reading this stuff. I'm thinking to myself, how do these people, you have to be a pretty shitty human being or have something going on to really wish that much hate or death upon someone. I mean, come on. When you really break it down, he's a 74-year-old grandfather. That's what he's the president of the United States, but end all be all, he's just like anyone else. And to wish harm or death upon him, that's just completely uncalled for. And like you said, classless.
It is classless too. And it goes back to Justice Ginsburg passing too, and seeing. It seemed to me that, and you can come at it from the law standpoint, but it seemed to me anyone that doesn't have reverence for a Supreme Court justice, regardless of a history of opinions, it's still a Supreme Court justice. There's only so many of these appointments. There are appointments for life. Yeah, we look to these people as the top judicial folks in the country. If you can't respect at least the seat that they're sitting in, then there's something really anti-American about that. You're just not a quality citizen. Yeah. And that's where I think that I think a lot of people did their very best to honor her legacy. Sure. But I think that a lot of people shit on her legacy too, just because she's on the other side. Yeah, I don't get it.
Well, and that's the problem. Look, and I'm not going to pretend to be a Supreme Court expert, but I believe the court has been politicized somewhat, and it shouldn't be. You should be appointed to interpret and uphold the law, right? Regardless of your political affiliation, you're appointed to do that. And the problem is we have politicians interject themselves into the conversation that makes it political. Okay. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg was an amazing justice. I mean, whether you like her opinions or not, she was an intellectual master. I mean, she was one of the best we've had, and it's terrible to see that she died. And there, the replacement, I think, I've read some of her opinions. I think she's a very intelligent, judicial scholar. I think she'll make a good justice. But the fact that they're now making it political is just, again, it's we are too inclined as a population to politicize everything that doesn't agree with us. And that, to me, I think has caused a lot of the problems in this country. We have to be okay with disagreement. If you can't deal with someone else's opinion that doesn't gel with yours, you've got bigger problems. Like, there is disagreement in life, but now it's everything becomes this huge disagreement, and it's about whose side are you on. Okay. And it's what this person's doing and what this person's doing, and it's, unfortunately, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. Unfortunately, for some people, Donald Trump's the president, and the Republicans hold the Senate. They will appoint her to the Supreme Court. It's the timing of it. It's the president.
Well, elections have consequences.
Well, right. That's the thing. And it's, and people get
always.
Exactly, and they get into the argument about when Obama did it in 2016, right? They stopped him from nominating. I can't remember the justice's name, but they stopped him from nominating a justice in his last year because the reason why is it was divided government. He didn't. The Democrats controlled the White House. The Republicans controlled the Senate.
Right.
So they couldn't get it through.
Right.
And the Republicans, they've double talked and they said certain things back then.
But that's politics, though.
Exactly. If you expect anything different, then you're not watching close enough.
And that's where Rocco, that's what I don't understand. Why do we make this massive thing about a political decision just because the people with the loudest voices don't like the decision? And I mean loudest voices meaning the actresses, the actors, the musicians, the people that have a bent that they're just a little bit more important than the average folk.
Right.
They can yell the loudest because they have the megaphones.
Yeah.
But it's just a political decision. Had it been reversed, the Republicans would be screaming bloody murder, and Pelosi would be walking arm in arm with the new liberal bent justice up there. That's just politics.
Exactly.
There's nothing different today than there was years ago. It's just, I think, how we maybe publicly talk to each other is a lot different now.
That's really what it is. And what you just said is exactly it. Because this is politics. This stuff happens and has happened for decades.
Well, we set it up this way. It isn't inherently wrong. This is how it's supposed to work.
Yes. If the president's job is to nominate a justice, the Senate confirms.
Right.
Right. If there's a Republican in the White House and the Senate has the majority, is the majority Republican, the president's more than likely going to be able to appoint a justice that gets confirmed by the Senate, unless the shit hits the fan and something comes out. So it is what it is. It's government the way it's set up. If it was on the Democratic side, the same thing would happen. You accept the results either way. Like you said, elections have consequences.
We've forgotten that in this country.
Well, that's the problem. And the problem is we give voices to people about politics that shouldn't have them. I don't need to hear from celebrities or athletes about politics unless you're an expert in politics.
Right.
If you understand how the Constitution is written and the responsibility of the president and the Senate, and you can articulate that intelligently as an athlete or an entertainer, not knocking either one of those.
No, it's a different field, though.
It's a different field.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not going to sit up here and try and talk about medical, advice. I'm a lawyer, not a doctor, and we sometimes need to learn to stay in our lane. And I understand they have this platform, but they use that platform and they don't realize the damage it does when you have a lot of people.
It's ego, right?
It's ego.
It's ego.
But you have these young people, following these athletes and entertainers and just latching on to what they say because they think that is the right opinion, and it could be factually false. But there's no verification of it, and because they have 1 million followers on Twitter, it travels through social media like it's gospel. And that's the shit that's happening, and that's a big part of the problem in this country right now. The misinformation that's being spewed and the disinformation. It's stay in your lane. Like, if you're an entertainer, be an entertainer.
Right. That's called sophistication.
Right. Don't wax about politics.
And well, that's more of a sophisticated way of living. But to do that, you have to have, as we've talked prior, you have to have humility.
Yes.
You have to exercise it.
Yeah.
And you need to have pride in that the things that come out of your mouth need to be factual, or you need to have some certainty to it. If you don't have any desire to speak with certainty, you're okay with just saying anything for the moment that you're in to get the biggest response. That's not a sophisticated way of living. And I get bashed a lot for using that word sophistication, but I think it's the perfect word.
Yeah.
So much of us today don't care even what that word means, or even to try to live that way, because we're in the now. It's about get that like, get that smile, get that reaction now. I want to live in the now and get the feedback now.
Well, and that's that instant gratification that people need, right? It's like that drug. It's that they liked it, they commented, it's important, I'm important, and that's what people are doing. So I like to observe on social media. Like I don't really I've made a couple posts over the years about my political views or just views on certain things, but for the most part, I like to just watch and observe.
Right.
And when I see the stuff that people put from the Trump side and the Biden side, And it's so triggering to the other side. And it's like they do it just for the sake of triggering the other side.
Of course.
And I'm thinking to myself, why? Like, what is the benefit of that? We need to heal as a country. We need to come together as a country. We need to stop with all this bullshit. Stop with the fighting. All that does is fuel it. Like, I want to live in a country, and I want my kids to grow up in a country where, regardless of who the president is, regardless of who controls Congress, we as a people all kind of agree with the same stuff and all kind of want the same thing.
What it is to be an American.
Right. And I feel like we do. There's a big, and I think we talked about this last time, 70% of us do want mostly the same things, but the 15% on each side have the loudest voices.
Okay. So, right. So why do the extremes of both political philosophies always seem to be the most intimidating?
Well, because think about it, right? You and I, we tend to be reasonable people, right? We will interject ourselves in a conversation only when it makes sense to us, only when we have something sophisticated or intelligent to add that we believe in.
I'd like to think so, yeah.
So that's the majority, I think, the people that sit in the middle. We have our personal beliefs, we have our feelings. We'll only engage in a discussion if it makes sense. The people on the far extremes, they don't have that self-awareness. They think everything they believe is the most important thing there is.
How did we get those people? Or are they just louder now? They're always around.
They were always around. They have a platform now. They have a phone that now is basically their own personal media company.
Okay.
So they can go out and put whatever they want. They can do live streams. They can post. They can go crazy to trigger the other side. And to them, it's what drives them. Right? They love the attention. And you can see it when I watch these people post and I watch these people, do these live feeds and these live streams. I'm thinking to myself, when people just do live streams to just talk about their thoughts at that moment, in not like an intellectual thought, like, hey, let's have a discussion about this important issue. It's about how terrible the other side is. I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck? Like, what makes you think that people care about this? And why do you keep doing it? I don't get it. And maybe I'm just the minority that's looking at it like, why does this happen? And it's that attention. People, and I think there is, and I hate to say this is my own opinion, but I think there are probably some self-confidence and self-esteem issues. Typically, those loud people are the ones that need the attention the most.
Okay.
And they make these statements to trigger people, to get the attention, to start those conversations because it makes them feel important. That's what I think.
Do we have maybe we do have a mental illness epidemic in this country? I mean, you say that everybody's mind goes to the extreme.
Yeah.
Mental illness, you need to be in an insane asylum.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying high functional, mentally disturbed people. Yeah. It could be ego driven. It could be whatever. That
Narcissism.
just need to be heard so they feel validated. Like, I don't need to go outside right now and yell in the street about either candidate, or maybe the donut I got across the street wasn't to my liking. Like,
sure.
But there are people that just have to express their dismay. I wish it was good stuff, but usually just their dismay at something, and they need to voice that. And I think we have a shit ton of people in society right now on a hair trigger will just do that. Yeah. And they're gearing a lot of it toward not getting their political way.
Yeah.
Every day.
Well, think about it. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? When you're stuck at the bottom, that's where those people are. They need, it's that, that basic need of, I can't remember what the bottom is, but it's kind of like they need that attention. I mean, it's human nature, right, to want to feel validated. I believe everybody, to a certain extent, wants to feel validation for what we think, believe, or do. I mean, I know I'm self-aware of myself. There are certain things that I want validation from my wife or from my kids or from my clients. That's just something I need to make sure I'm doing the right things.
Okay.
And I think the people that are those loud voices take it to the extreme. It's the validation of their opinion, of what they believe, and they surround themselves with the people that only believe what they believe, and the people that are opposed are just complete whack jobs or assholes, and they can't gel with that. Look, I believe that we all have different opinions. You and I have different opinions, and we accept that. We challenge one another.
Of course.
That's called an intellectual conversation.
That's the beauty of life to me.
Well, right, and it's not everybody's going to agree with you. With these people that are on those extremes, you're right. There is something. I don't want to say mental illness. Maybe that is the right word. There's a lack of attention. There's something lacking, I believe, in their life.
Okay.
That they're trying to make up for by stirring the pot, creating shit, just driving attention to themselves. Because a lot of the stuff that I watch online, when I hear these people talk, or I watch them on their feeds, and don't ask me why I watch, I just get curious.
Sure.
It's like there was nothing of substance to anything you said. It was purely just getting people to validate what you believe, and what you believe may not even be your original thought. It just may be a headline you took from somewhere else or someone else's thought. And it's just vicious cycle of just this self-gratifying validation they get from being the loudest, from pounding the table, from I'm important, listen to me. Like I'm the one that knows. You don't know shit. And I'm like, it's not the case. Like none of us really know much. We're all just trying to get by and live life the best we can.
Right. But that's okay. Like it's okay.
Right.
Like, we've somehow moved away from an idea, I think, in society, at least in America, that it's okay not to have an opinion.
Yeah.
And I've kind of talked about this recently with a couple other guests, and I was waiting for you to get in because that kind of just like an epiphany hit me. I was reading Epictetus and some other essays from Marcus Aurelius, and I know you do. It was just, why did I not recognize this prior? But you don't have to have an opinion on everything, and it just was a light bulb moment for me. Like I kind of already was living that way, but it was really identifiable once I read those passages that we just don't need to have an opinion. It's okay to be indifferent on anything.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I agree, and I think recently I've come to even more terms with that because, I'm a lawyer. I'm opinionated. I have certain stances when it comes to politics or my beliefs. But I've had discussions with my friends, with two close friends of mine, over this whole political cycle that we have very differing views. And we would get into arguments over certain things. Not arguments, but just heated discussions.
Sure.
Where there were times where I noticed myself engaging in the discussion, but realizing that I don't really give a shit about this issue.
Right.
And I'm like, why am I even bothering to engage and like causing not strain between my friends and I, because there is not, we just do that. But I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, that's their opinion. That's their right to have that. And I should not be trying to counter it if I don't really care that much. And I noticed myself getting into those discussions. And then when I reflect on them after the fact, I'm like, wait a minute. I really don't care about that much anymore. There was stuff that I cared about in the past that I've kind of shifted more towards the middle. I'm like, I don't need to have an opinion. Like, I don't need to be the guy that gets in that discussion. I can just let it go and I have my opinions, you have yours, and maybe you have one that I have no opinion on. That's okay. And it's funny you say that because over the past 3-4 months, I've realized that a lot more about myself as well.
I think people also... A lot of people believe that they must have an opinion on everything.
Yes.
I don't know if it's a quest to show that they know a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It could be innocent. Maybe they just feel compelled to carry on a conversation where they're uninformed. And the problem is when you do that, a lot of what you say becomes a guess. Or becomes very inaccurate, maybe factually inaccurate, and that doesn't help the national narrative when you have a shit ton of people doing that all the time.
Yeah, no, I mean that is such a good point because I believe that's the majority of people out there. Like look, you and I, we kind of read about the same stuff. We do.
It's uncanny, actually.
But there's I know that I only know 10 to 20% of this stuff.
Absolutely.
This other 80 over here, I shouldn't be engaging in those conversations because I don't have the intellect or the knowledge to engage.
Isn't that common sense? Like I think that's kind of how society used to run.
But because when we talk about politics in things like current events, people feel they have to say something because I feel like they feel that they have to seem like they are informed. But then you hear them get into these discussions,
and they're not.
And they're not at all. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second. Like, it's okay to just be quiet and say, I don't pay attention to that. I have no idea what you're talking about. And
that
it's
takes
hard
humility.
For people. It does.
That takes humility.
That comes back to it, humility.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing for people to have.
Like, why? And here's the funny part about this is that when you become okay with indifference, and again, indifference is a big word. We could talk a whole show on the word indifference because it means a lot to different people.
Yeah.
The indifference I mean is being choosy in regards to what you spend your mental energy on.
Sure.
And based upon how certain things matter to you and your life and your people you love, or what you just choose to be fascinated by or not fascinated by. It's okay. And when you choose to be indifferent on something, your life gets generally easier.
Yes. Yes. Because you don't have that stress of trying to figure shit out or try and feel like you have to be in this conversation or you have to know something. And, and again, I was probably like that in the past. I'm sure.
Me too.
I'm sure I was.
Me too.
I was the asshole that thought I knew everything. And I was that person that had to interject myself in the conversation. But as I've matured and gotten older and reflected more on my own self, I realized that, there's just certain things I don't care about as much anymore, so I don't need to be in those discussions. If you care about it, that's amazing. That's great. I'll listen to you 100%. I'll give you my attention. But I'm not going to debate it anymore if I don't have an opinion either way. I'm not going to agree with you, but I'm not going to disagree with you either. Like, that's kind of how I look at it. And I think people feel, well, if I don't have an opinion, that means I agree with them. And to me, it's and that's where I think people get into the problem. I think that's the reason why people get in the discussion.
Grade,
but it's
to
the truth.
Assume that's so second grade.
But think about it though. If the majority of people, I feel like, if you are saying something and I don't agree with it, my natural instinct is, well, then I must disagree with it. And when you look at it deeper and become more aware of your thought processes, to me, it's, I don't agree with you. I just don't care.
Right.
It's not about that it's not that I disagree with you. I just don't agree with you. Okay. I don't have to have to take the other side.
Right.
If you say, pizza's the best food ever, and I don't think it is, but I don't disagree with you. There's a nuance there that I think people have a hard time understanding. They think, well, the opposite of agreeing is disagreeing.
Right.
To me, it's like, if I don't agree with you, that just means maybe I don't care.
Exactly right.
I don't have to disagree. I just don't care enough to formulate an opinion on that.
I had Ed Lattimore on recently. Love to have you and him both on together. Yeah. We got to figure that out.
Done.
But he nothing really ever seems to. He's unflappable. Okay. It's kind of like you, but even worse. Like, you just can't. He's sparring Roy Jones Jr. right now.
Yeah.
He's that thing. So obviously,
I'm definitely not doing
he's
that.
He's unflappable.
Yeah.
But he said to me, one thing that really kind of raised his ire was, he goes, I really don't like it when somebody thinks that because I don't go, I'm deciding not to take an action on their action, that I must be opposite of their action.
Yeah, yes.
Having to do with voting. He says, he said he had a friend that said, well, if you don't vote for so-and-so, then that's just like voting for the other person. And he was so angry at that, put off by that, and not offended.
Yeah.
Ed doesn't get offended.
Sure.
But he just said, what a terrible way to think that if I just don't vote the same you do, or maybe I sit it out and don't vote at all, that's a vote for the other person, you're assuming that you know what my beliefs are and what I'm thinking when you really have no idea.
Yep.
And it's such an elementary way of living. And his point was that people are walking around maneuvering through their life on a daily basis, making decisions, some about what, pack of gum to buy, and some are like buying mortgages, with that mindset, that kind of, I don't know how he described it, like a fatalist mindset or an assumptive mindset. Maybe it was an assumptive mindset. It's so, if it isn't dangerous, it really is like so unsophisticated.
Yeah, I mean, did you ever read the book Mindset by, I think, Carol Dweck?
No.
It's a great book. It talks about the fixed and the growth mindset. To me, that's kind of the fixed mindset. If you don't agree with me, you disagree. That's just a fixed mental framework you've created.
Are you born with that?
I can't remember how the book says it, but I think mindsets develop, but I think people have a propensity to be one way or the other. And it comes a lot from how you're raised, your schooling. I think that creates, it's either A or B. Like, that's the fixed mindset. It's one way or the other.
Okay.
Where the growth mindset is, well, it could be A, B, it could be C, or it could be a new way that we're going to discover down the road. When it comes to what we were just talking about, like people that either you agree or disagree, that's a fixed mindset,
Okay.
right? There's two options. I either agree with you, or if my actions don't agree with you, I automatically disagree with you. A growth mindset looks at it from a perspective of, well, okay, you don't agree with me. Maybe you either just don't care. Maybe you have a different thought. Maybe you're looking at it from a totally different perspective. Just because you don't agree with the action or the thing I'm doing doesn't mean you disagree. Doesn't mean it's the opposite. There just may be a different path. And that's it's a good book to read. It talks about, and how to determine whether you're a fixed or a growth mindset and how to really change, because you want to be more of a growth mindset.
Certainly.
To look at the world differently.
Certainly.
It's a great book. I encourage everybody to read it. It's but that's a lot of what it is, right? That fixed mindset.
Yeah, that's not a sophisticated way of living.
No, not at all.
Not at all. And it has to be very limiting.
That's the point of the book.
And I think people don't either think that through, or they're so living in such a reactionary circumstance and making like life decisions on maneuvers on a daily basis based upon that quick immediacy for an answer and then move on. Like, there was an executive, a very famous business executive that ran Sunbeam. His name was Al Dunlap.
Okay.
Or Al Dunlap. I think it's Dunlap, I believe.
Okay.
He had wrote a book called Mean Business.
Okay.
And if you haven't read that, you need to read that. I think he was a very harsh man, and he goes to great lengths to explain this harshness, and it worked. He forced his way to work for a while, but it didn't ultimately work in the long run.
Okay.
And I think the reason it didn't ultimately work was part of the reason was that he was in a fixed mindset, but willing his way, to be successful. But that always happens usually at the expense of all the relationships around him.
Exactly.
Mean Business.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I've never read that.
Yeah,
book.
he would probably definitely be not your conventional executive, but it's probably a good read for those who need to read the other side or need to read the other, because you need to read everything, right?
Well, I always say when it comes to even politics, it's always good to look at the other side, because you may have a breakthrough. You may just need a different perspective.
And people that don't are afraid that they may have a breakthrough.
That's exactly
They're
right.
afraid. I believe that. For those who don't want to listen, if you're a Republican and you don't want to listen to the Democratic speech, or you don't want to read Democratic thought or works, it's because I think it's out of fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Think about it, because if your personal philosophy is so grounded and you really know what you believe, you'd want to absorb everything.
Yeah.
Because your idea would be that you want to be open to everything, but if you're that grounded on your principles, nothing can change your principles.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's a really good point. I think it is fear that maybe there's something that'll connect with me on the other side, and then it shatters your, that frame you've created for yourself, that I believe I'm this way, but then but
they're not sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I used to be that way. I thought I was way more Republican than I am, but then I realized that there's just a lot of stuff I don't really care about that are really far conservative values, where I really tend to sit towards the middle.
But wouldn't you agree there's a difference between being fearful and adaptable?
Huge difference. I think the way to be in life is to be adaptable. I mean, life changes so fast. Information changes so fast. To get ahead in life, to be successful in anything you choose to do, whether it be business, your personal life, you have to be adaptable. I mean, if you're not adaptable, you're going to be left behind very quick.
Okay, so that's true, and I think we've kind of known that since the internet really took a hold with automation and just everything we're seeing. Is part of the reason why we're in such a caustic society with a lot of triggered people and a lot of fixed mindset folk. Are we there because that's somehow a pushback against the need to be a more adaptable person? People just don't want to be. They literally don't want to be adaptable. And it's easy to join a team or a tribe. That's the coy word of the month. because they're fighting for their side and they're so rigid in their beliefs and it's my way or the highway. That's not adaptable. Maybe it's just easier.
Oh, well, look, the majority of people don't like things that are challenging. We like comfort. Human nature is to find our comfort zone. That's why we have the word comfort zone, right? We want to be warm. We want to be safe. We want to feel secure. Having a certain viewpoint that, gels with everything you believe is secure and safe and comfortable. It doesn't take effort. When you become adaptable and you start looking at the world differently from different perspectives, reading different things, listening to different things, that's hard work. It's hard to do, right? It just takes pure effort and time, right? For me to, if I spend on most days, I spend probably 2 to 3 hours either reading, listening, or watching something informational,
right?
Be it, personal development, stuff for my business, news in general. That's a lot of effort, but I choose to do that because I want to make sure I'm adaptable to society. I have to constantly learn and adjust.
Was that a habit or is there a natural curiosity you have?
Well, I think I think maybe there's partial curiosity that was natural, but it's a how do you develop.
Okay.
Like, I don't think anybody wakes up and says, you know what, I just want to read 3 hours a day and just learn all kinds of new shit. You have to start small and you have to build that habit. And I've built that habit over time. I mean, when I started doing it, it was maybe 20, 30 minutes a day, but now I've kind of broken my day up where I make sure I'm doing these things because I'm running businesses, I'm responsible for my family, and I want to be informed, and I want to contribute to society and contribute to the conversation where it makes sense. And to do that, I have to constantly learn and adapt and adjust. So it's a habit I've created over time. I do think there's probably some innate curiosity. I was always curious as a kid, but I've developed it more as an adult.
Let me turn the subject a little bit to our younger people right now. Let's talk at those who are like in their late teens, early 20s, and in the society they're walking in right now. I feel bad in one regard, and that is that in today's society, we are forcing these young people to live in a world where they feel they have to make decisions, yes or no, more than I think we went through. Case in point, I've watched my son and his friends talk about different things once in a while, and when I was that age, Rocco, politics was like in the fray, and you would see once in a while like people wear a button for Bush or for Gary Hart, or I'm dating myself now, Jimmy Carter, but it was never discussed in the House, and it really wasn't discussed like anywhere outside of a polling area or maybe a rally for a local Democratic fundraiser or a Republican fundraiser. But you didn't talk about it.
No, exactly.
So I was never, like, even as a young voting adult, I wasn't put on the spot like, are you for Reagan or Hart or Gary, or are you for Bush or Clinton? No one asked me. But I think like today, those young adults, even if they want to be indifferent or they don't feel comfortable talking about that stuff, there's a compulsion that they're forced to do that.
Yeah.
I think it's very, I don't like the word fair, but it seems societally unfair to them to put them, give them a litmus test or feel like they have a litmus test for their own social interactions, for friends or whatever. And I feel badly about that because I think our generation has done that to them.
Of course. Well, I think that, and I think social media has too, because I think it's popular now to be on a team, right? So these kids grew up with social media. They're on these platforms, and they see if I open Facebook right now, right? Instagram not as much. If I open Facebook right now, I can guarantee you the majority of the shit I'm going to see is going to be talking about politics or Trump or the lockdowns or COVID. That's just what's going to be. And I've cleared out a lot of that on my feed, and I still see it. So they're getting on these feeds and they're seeing this stuff. So they feel like they have to be. When we were growing up, we didn't have this, right? I remember when I was in college, the only reason I voted the first time is my fraternity brothers made me vote. They're like, you need to vote. You need to be Republican. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. But cool. Like, I'll go vote with you. And then, and that's why I think too, like, is 18, now we can get in the argument that if you're 18, you can go to the military. But I think to understand the consequences of voting is hard at that. Like, my son's 19 years old.
Right.
he hasn't experienced the world yet to understand what one candidate or one party can do or not do for you, right? He's just going to, if he votes, he's going to vote based upon what he believes from either the stuff I tell him or his mom tells him, right? Like that's, or he's, or
like
his
most
friends.
kids probably,
and it's, is that right? You know, to me, like, I think you need to understand more. And where people go wrong with voting too, when it comes to this, is we put so much significance on the presidential election when it's really Congress that matters. And people just forget about that. The midterm elections, those matter more, in my opinion, than the presidential
There's no
election.
question. It's just the presidential election is just sexy. It's
yeah, of course.
It's media sexy.
Yes,
that's all.
yes, but it's the president signs into law and he makes the executive orders that don't really have a lot of teeth. Congress is the one, they're the ones that are making the laws. They're the ones.
Should be.
So, and these people get in. I read an article probably 2 weeks ago, which made, or actually on a podcast, made my jaw drop. The statistic was the majority of congressmen and women have a 20% job approval rating, yet a 94% reelection rate. So think about that. That means if I have an employee working for me, they are a bottom performer, but they're going to have a lifelong job. That's horseshit. Like,
now, why is that though?
Because again, we don't put significance on midterm elections. We don't put significance on the power Congress has. And then when you get people in, there's no term limits.
Okay. So what about cost of entry? Like if, like you and I both, where we're positioned in life right now, if we wanted to make that move to run for state rep, let's say we're going to start.
Sure.
Let's just say, we'll start a state rep. Even for a state job, a state representative job in Pennsylvania, you know, there's an element of financial risk. We can afford it.
Yeah, of course.
But it wouldn't be pleasant to lose that money.
Yeah, right.
So the cost of entry is not like just grassroots where you can go door to door and do some of that stuff, but you know as well as I do, there's going to be a sign cost. And
you got to raise the money.
You got to raise the money.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a grind, man.
It is.
That's a grind. And so the cost of entry, the common man really doesn't have an easy way to get there.
And that's the problem. So you've got to pick a party, one of the two parties, to get the party's backing to be able to afford to do that. And that's the problem we have with this two-party system, right? You have
feeding the beast.
It's the truth. When you think about, like, if I ever chose to run, I'd have to pick a party. Like,
right.
Really, if I really wanted to run on a third-party platform, it'd be almost impossible to get elected.
Right.
If I wanted to get elected and try and make a difference, I've got to pick a side. And I'd more than likely pick Republican because I just lean more conservative for certain things when it comes to economics and taxes.
Right.
But again, like, that's the problem. Like, you know, and then you get these people that get into office, then they're in the machine. And as long as they do what the machine tells them to do, their re-election is almost guaranteed.
Right.
And that's, I mean, when you look at these people that are, you know, the Chuck Schumers and the Mitch McConnells and the Nancy Pelosi, they've been there a bazillion years. They're 1,000 years old.
40 years, right?
And it's like, why do we keep letting these people govern? Like, that's what I don't get. When
you really probably wouldn't hire them to be a mid-level manager in your company.
No,
think about that.
All. That's the problem.
Think about that.
And what's interesting to me, I was having a discussion earlier today when we were talking about the whole Trump tax return thing, which, you know, that's a whole story in and of itself and what people are concerned about. I said, but here's the bigger question I have. Why aren't we asking a lot of these politicians, like the Nancy Pelosi's and the Mitch McConnells and these people that have been in politics making 100 and some thousand a year for X amount of years, how are they making millions of dollars a year and have net worths of hundreds of millions of dollars? That to me is a bigger concern than our president paying $750 in income tax, which is the nuance that people don't get.
Exactly.
He's a real estate developer. He's capital gains, like it's investment income. You're not going to pay income tax on that. Like there's these nuances.
But that takes sophisticated thinking.
Right. Well,
it really, as you and I would think,
point.
But as you and I really would say, it really doesn't take sophisticated thinking, because to me, sophisticated thinking is really sitting down and like vetting something out.
Sure.
That's just elemental thinking. That's just thinking, period, if you take the next step.
Yeah.
We just don't do that as a society.
Well,
it's
right.
a trigger point to just yell and scream that he's a tax cheat.
Right. Well, look,
Right?
and that's the thing. And look, I look at it as like, if I could pay $750 a year in taxes too, I think everybody would do that if you own a business. And again, you're right. It's not. Maybe there is a slight level of sophistication to understand that, but when they talk about that, like he when he was pressed in the debate, he does pay millions of dollars in taxes. Mm-hmm. It's just federal income tax, right? I mean, Joe Biden kind of does the same thing. If you make an S corp election, you pay a very low income tax because I'm a lawyer. I have a law firm, right? I elect to be taxed as an S corporation. What that means is my income I make in the year, I pay myself a reasonable salary. So say we'll just use, for example, say I made $5 million this year, right? Mm-hmm. And is a reasonable salary for a solo lawyer $100,000 a year? If the IRS says that's a reasonable salary, that means I could pay myself $100,000 a year as a salary and pay self-employment tax or the FICA, FUTA, Medicare on that. The rest of the money I pay as a profit distribution.
Got it.
And I don't pay self-employment tax on that.
Got it.
Or I can do different things with it. So that's the thing. That's
the law.
That's the law. It's
right.
the tax. If Trump was smart on his feet, he could have said in that point in time, I was just following the tax code that was in place under your presidency. I mean, because he didn't do anything illegal. He just followed the law, and the tax code incentivizes business and real estate investment.
That's why it's there. That's supposedly that's why it's there.
And that's the problem. And it comes back to, like you said, the whole thing. People don't want to think. They want to just take the headline and run with it and pick that position and support the position. And to me, it's like, well, if you try and understand a little bit farther,
right,
and you come up with that same analysis, then that's fine. That's your right to have that opinion. If you think he's a tax cheat because he only paid $750,000 or $750, it's your opinion. If you go that next level, understand where the money actually went, or understand that he actually paid forward, I think $30 million in taxes that he let the IRS keep to apply to following years. But we don't want to do that. It's too hard. It comes back to your whole.
It's not sexy.
Well, it's not sexy. It's difficult. It takes work.
Not.
People want to click on whatever website they go to, read the headline. Trump paid this bullshit. He paid us $750 in taxes. F this guy, and that's it. And that's the narrative.
That sums up the entire narrative. That's the entire process and the ultimate narrative.
Yeah, but that's it. It's a headline that people are like, oh, that's bullshit, and then they move on to the next headline without even clicking the link to read the actual article. And that's the problem we have in society right now. We have to get better. We have to get better as people. We have to learn to understand one another at a deeper level, to understand issues at a deeper level, to understand what's going on in the world at a deeper level. And I believe if we all made a conscious effort to do that, our society would be better. We would respect one another more. Different things would happen in the world, but because we need things quick and dirty, and we want to just pick that team really fast, and we see that makes sense, that's bullshit. It's because these two things added up with my team, this one didn't. This could have all the facts. These could be completely made up. These could be like the Onion articles.
Exactly.
And it's like, well, that's right. I'm like, no. That's the Onion. That's a satire website.
Satire website.
But that's the shit that happens.
I know it is. And that's the crazy part about society in general, where it's like, and these are some of the people that are being fooled by these satire websites, or are just making off the cuff comments there are really intelligent people. Yes. I've seen attorney friends of mine, doctor friends of mine, business friends of mine who I have to send them a private message and just say, look, this is uncomfortable to say, but I mean, I know you don't do much on social media, but that thing you just spread at the bottom, if you actually click the link, not the headline, just don't share the headline, click the link and see exactly what you are sharing.
Yes, exactly.
It's a satire site. And there have been some people that have been very, but what's crazy, man? This is what's really crazy. Yeah. So I've asked, my stance will always remain the same, that no one's mind is being changed by social media rants.
Not at all. No, not at all.
But once in a while, you'll get people that will oh, well, I can tell you that on this date, I got someone to open their mind, and that's where we enter the delusion state for me, because then I'm starting to look at my friends who feel that way, and I'm saying to myself, I still don't think you're a delusional asshole. Right. I just think you've been doing this kind of nonsensical behavior for so long that you've validated your own activity as if it has some kind of communal worth by spreading the good word.
Yeah.
It's not a religion, man. No. You're treating it like it is, but you're either a Republican or a Democrat, and you bought into one or the other, and you think you're going to straighten those fucking people out.
Yeah, no, you're not. You're not. No,
they think they're doing it, Rocco. They think they believe that they're doing it.
Well, it comes back to ego and narcissism, I believe. The people that look, I tend to think I'm a somewhat intelligent person. I know that I could write something on social, and I've written stuff. I know that's not convincing anybody. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm just stating something I feel at the time.
Yeah.
I'm not. I can't
for your own to get it out.
My own. That was literally for me to just self-therapy, to just get it out and say what was on my mind. It wasn't trying to convince anybody. And one of my good friends made a comment about that. I'm like, dude, I'm not trying to convince anybody.
Yeah.
It's just I'm not taking a stand.
If there was more of that, as opposed to the combat, the snarky combat we see constantly.
We know even the debates weren't going to change anybody's mind.
No.
Like, none of this shit matters right now. No. You've dug in, you've picked your team. What happens over the next 4 weeks is not really going to change much. And I wish people would understand, like you said, on social media. Now, there have been times where I've read things, I'm like, that's an interesting point, and then I try and research it further to validate it. Because if someone shares something, I'm like, okay, well, is that legit? I want to understand.
Where did it come from?
Right, where did they come from? And I try and understand. And there's been a couple of times where I'm like, okay, interesting fact, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
It doesn't change my mind. It doesn't change my viewpoint. And you're never going to do that on social media.
People think they're doing it, though.
I know.
They think it. I mean, some intelligent people in my sphere came at me hard one time when I was laughing. Like, you realize people just already know what they're going to do. And they're telling me these times that they got people to think a different way, or they got people to reconsider a different viewpoint. And, I'm like, okay, if you think that, but you're more inclined to have that happen during human interaction than you would be spouting garbage on
social media.
A screen.
Social media has become a joke. I mean, let's be honest. It's become,
it's crazy.
It's literally where I go for humor anymore, because I read stuff and I'm just like, holy shit, from the Trump supporters to the Biden supporters, I'm like, people have gotten batshit crazy. Now, there are intelligent people that will articulate something in a very succinct and intelligent way.
But even some of them think, because I've spoken big words and that I know I'm going to convince some people.
Yes.
You're not convincing anybody.
I always say, when it comes to an argument or a discussion, and this is kind of not for social media, but just in interaction, my goal is never to convince you that I am right. All I care about is if you can see where I'm coming from. If you can understand my viewpoint, you don't have to agree with it.
Right.
That's all that matters.
Right.
And then you understand that there is more than just your viewpoint, and I understand there's just more than my viewpoint. I think if we did more of that as a society, we'd be a lot more tolerant of one another. We don't have to agree on everything. We don't have to agree on everything that's happening in the country, whether it's good or bad. We don't have to agree on all these politically charged issues. If we can just understand that, hey, maybe there are different ways of looking at a situation, and be tolerant of the other viewpoints, half the shit that's going on right now probably wouldn't happen. We'd have a more thoughtful discussion. We'd have a more civil society, in my opinion. But because we don't do that by nature, it creates this unrest. It creates this animosity in this complete explosion of emotion that people just can't get away from.
Have you seen this type of social media behavior? Have you seen it infiltrate its way into like business the past 7, 8, 9 years?
Honestly, no. I haven't. I think that it always comes down to politics, in my opinion. Okay. I think social media goes off the rails in election years, or when something very politically charged happens. I haven't really seen it in business, and maybe I'm just not looking, but I don't really see that. I think people are going to do business with who they want to do business with, and I think it doesn't. I try not to put my political views out there. Not that they're very, polarizing, but because I understand my clients come from all walks of life, and
absolutely,
I want to serve them. I don't want what I believe in to
be part of that conversation.
Right. It doesn't matter because it shouldn't matter.
I feel the same way.
And so it's I don't, but I do think there are some people, because I have noticed there are certain people that support certain viewpoints and certain businesses that are a certain way that probably have been impacted by it. And I think that's just, it may be not talked about a lot, but I'm sure it happens.
See, as a realtor, I walk a really funny line. And you probably do as an attorney as well, a little different. But my thing is, I'm okay with going to talk to a new client and having them have Joe Biden signs or having them have a Trump banner. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
What does bother me, it's only happened twice, and I haven't gotten those pieces of business where I was given a litmus test. And if I didn't think a certain way, I wasn't going to get the business.
Interesting.
So have you ever encountered that at all in your career?
I haven't. And maybe the law's different. It's
it could be.
Because I mean people typically come to me for a specific reason. So that just never comes up in discussion, right? I'm helping them solve their business problem, or set up their business, or deal with the issue at hand. It's at least to my face, it's never happened. Now, I've lost a few clients over the years. I don't necessarily think it was from politics or political reasons. It might have been that, one, I tend to just tell people like it is, and some people want someone to kiss their ass, and I'm just not that lawyer that does it. If I don't think your idea is good, I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to let you spend your money on setting up a business or trademarking a name if I don't think your product or your business is going to go anywhere. I'll shoot it straight with people. Some people don't like that. They get butthurt by it.
Right, so, absolutely right.
But from a political standpoint, I've never had my politics
impact
my business.
I had litmus tests given to me twice. I'll tell you another interesting story I had too, was I had who's a good friend of mine. It's my client's become a great friend. I know that's typically your mantra, how you do business. We were listing their house a couple years ago, and they're a military family.
Okay.
And their living room, we had an open house. It was it was in Highland Park, and I'll just leave it at that. So it was a busy open house right before a Steeler game.
Okay.
And we had a couple come in the front door and mingle. And at an open house that size, Rocco, I bring extra agents because it's a big house. There's going to be a lot of traffic. It's just smart.
Yeah, of course.
I overhear a conversation between a couple looking at the photos on the military, of this military family, and making very disparaging comments.
Oh, that's terrible.
And I didn't say a word, and the family wasn't there.
Yeah.
But still. And I was like, wow, what an interesting way to maneuver one's life. I was more curious than angry.
Yeah.
But I just, at that moment, they lasted about 6 or 7 minutes. And that house could have been something beneficial for their family, but they would have never known because the bias was so powerful internally and outwardly that they didn't stay. So that was, again, that was also kind of a litmus test to a degree, but nothing to do with my relationship with my client. But I was really amazed at how unfortunate that is, that those two people are wired that way. It was just very eye-opening to me. Like, are you kidding me? You're interested in the home, but because the current owner is a military family and you might be anti-war, or whatever your stance is, you would outwardly express rage to the point where you were indignant and offended that you left the property before you ever realized whether the structure was going to work for you or not.
That is one thing that has always boggled my mind, regardless of your stance on the military or police. I look at it as like, that is the most selfless job, to sign up for the military and protect this country, so we can so you and I can have the freedom to sit here on a Friday afternoon and have this discussion. People put their lives on the line. Police officers, they choose a profession where they are putting their life on the line for the betterment of society. Now, look, I understand things have happened and there are officers that have done wrong.
Sure.
But again, these people have chosen a life of service to others. Like, I can't.
And they're from all walks of life.
All walks of life. Like my assistant, her husband's a police officer. I couldn't imagine doing his job.
Right.
He goes out every day And you never know what's going to happen. And I couldn't imagine being her, where she worries every day. Like, what if something happens? Like, that is, to me, that is the most selfless selfless job that anyone can do, and they deserve way more credit. They deserve way more support. And yeah, there are probably things we need to fix within both the military and the police force. And
so let's fix those things,
right,
and quit disparaging that line of work.
Right.
That's my issue.
Yes.
Fix the problem.
Yes.
We should be an ongoing, and if it's more training, whatever it is, get the right minds in there and fix it's not an unfixable problem.
Exactly.
What's going on in Portland, or where you pull police back and you see what happens there.
Yes.
We can't live like that.
Well, that's what I don't understand. But when we talk about this defund the police or community policing, I think to myself, okay, in theory, it may sound good on a soundbite, but is that really going to work? People think it does, but is that really going to work in society? No way. Like, I couldn't imagine being a cop or in the military. Like, I couldn't do that. Like, that is, I give so much credit to those individuals that choose that path,
right?
Because it is a pure definition of selfless. You don't make a shit ton of money doing it, right? You're putting your life on the line for others, for people you don't even know.
Yep.
That's a scary thing to think.
Yep.
And we expect them, we hold them to this high standard, but we seem to forget they're also human beings. They're not robots. People make mistakes. People react. And it's unfortunate the things that happen. And I feel for the stuff and the wrongs that have happened. And some of them are criminal, 100%. But some of them aren't.
Right.
But we criminalize the conduct. And that's the problem I have right now. Like, we need to learn to respect both sides of an argument, and let's get in a room and fix the problem. Like, let's not just argue about the problem. Let's put forth solutions and fix it.
Well, we think somehow in this country that if we see a social wrong, that if we just argue about it, it's magically going to get fixed.
Right.
When we know it's not going to happen. But somehow the argument makes us feel better. Whether the argument comes in terms of a protest, whether the argument comes in terms of getting on TV and talking about it, whether it's an argument of you and your neighbor. Somehow the act of arguing has replaced constructive, not constructive dialogue, constructive action. Arguing has now become the thing that's supposedly magically, my argument, is going to fix things.
No.
It fixes nothing.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, think about it from just a pure common sense perspective. That would be like me, if, say, my wife and I say I had an issue. That would be like me just yelling and screaming about the issue and kicking my feet like a little baby and expecting her to fix it, instead of just saying, hey, here's this issue, here's how I think we can solve it. Like, that's how you fix problems, right? You don't just kick and scream and argue until it gets fixed or someone else does it. That whole problem, I think, comes down to no one wants to take responsibility anymore. We lack responsibility in this country. Like, I can go out and protest and kick and scream, but I'm not, even these athletes, like, this is where I kind of get a little bit pissed off when it comes to the athletes, is they get up on their grandstand and like, this is injustice and we've got to do this. We've got to do something about it. You have the means. You have the money. Start a foundation. Donate money to police departments for better training. Do these things. Don't donate money to get criminals out of jail. Like, let's do the right things. And we get these people that just don't want to they want to be in the limelight and protest for this injustice, but when it comes down to the responsibility of fixing the injustice, they don't want to do it. It's too much work. Or it's not my style.
Some do, but not enough.
Yeah, exactly. Like, some do, and I applaud those people. And I think,
but not enough though.
No,
it's because it's easy to spend words.
Yes,
it's free to spend your words.
Yes,
and that's where, and I think the message is really kind of. I don't know how to say it. And again, I talk about the youngsters, youth athletics, and these young boys and girls looking up to these. That's what those kids do. They look up to the sports idols. Maybe we shouldn't. The one thing about my father used to say to me, Rocco, he goes, the one thing I will tell you, he goes, I don't mind you being in rock and roll because all them people are fucked up and they're not good role models, right? I'm more worried about you idolizing sports people because for some reason you think they're all just great people.
Yeah.
My dad said that to me, right?
I get it.
We do in society. We look at these people and You can argue till you're blue in the face whether they should carry that role model moniker and respond to it, or they have no obligation to do it, whatever. But the fact is, they are a role model to millions and millions of youth.
Absolutely.
And they're looking at them now.
Well, and
what are they thinking?
Well, right. And I always liked the old Charles Barkley ads. I'm not your role model. Like, he made it very clear that I do asshole shit and I'm not your role model. Right. He made it very clear.
He sure did.
And I'm okay with that. Like, if that's authenticity to me. Like, you get it. Like, I'm not stepping in that line. Like, I'm a NBA player. I'm a professional. I'm a superstar, but I'm not your role model.
Yeah.
These other people just step in. They want to be the role model.
They want it both ways.
When it's popular.
They want it both ways.
But when it's hard, they don't. They want to back out of it. They don't want to get involved in that. And it's, these problems we're talking about in this country are big problems that it's going to take a lot of effort to
More
fix.
than lip service.
Exactly. And I get like all of the talking and the protesting, and I understand that's our right, our First Amendment right. But at a certain point in time, we have to come together as a country in a room or in put forth solutions. How do we solve it? And instead of we get the kicking and screaming. We hear you. How do we fix it? Let's fix it.
Right.
Like, that would be like my two daughters fighting and fighting and fighting over something. And okay, we hear you, and then they just keep fighting. It's like, okay, well,
but there's no move to a reconciliation of ideas.
Right. Exactly. We've got to solve. If you're fighting over a toy, and we come to help you solve it, and you don't tell us or help us solve that with you,
right,
and you keep fighting, it's a fruitless effort. It loses its luster. And that's what I think the problem has happened in this country. Like, I think a lot of people have seen all these protests for all the different things people are protesting about. They mattered up to a point. And then because they just kept going and kept going, and
became really a political arm.
Right. And no one was putting forth comprehensive, concrete solutions. People were just like, well, fuck this. It's another protest.
Well, yeah. And because the protests have to lead to something.
Yes.
You just can't have perpetual protesting.
Right.
Because it will be marginalized in the consciousness of the country.
Yeah.
No one's going to care.
That's what's happening. And I think we should care about these issues. These issues
1,000%.
are important to talk about, and we've got to solve the problems we have in this country. But when you, like you said,
we can. It's America.
Exactly.
We can do anything in this country.
It's America. Like, one thing I will say that over the past, since this pandemic started, I was never one of those, like, I really love America. I just never thought about it as a country, right?
Yeah.
But when we get into all this stuff, like, I've realized how much I do love this country. Like, we really do live in the greatest country on this planet.
Just travel around, you'll know.
And I've been to India, I've been to Israel, I've been to Slovakia. Like, I've been to these places that there's not a shot in hell I'd want to live there. Like, I love this country, the opportunities we have. And people take it for granted. They really do. And I think sometimes we have to step back and put politics aside and just realize that we do live in an amazing country. And yeah, we have problems. Nothing's perfect. No one's perfect. But if we can take a step back and look at the landscape and how beautiful it actually is, like what we have in front of us, this country, what we can do here is truly amazing.
Oh, we got all the capital.
Yes.
We got all the education.
Yep.
We have all the rights.
Yep.
We have all the rights.
Yes, absolutely.
We have all the medical advances.
Yep.
Really, you'd be hard pressed to find any place on the planet that you wouldn't have the advantages as a human being.
Right.
Than right here.
Right. And then people argue about how much they hate America. And I think to myself, have you been other places?
Bad thinking. It's just stinking thinking.
I remember when I went to India for the first time, I had culture shock, like legit culture shock.
Yep.
I remember getting out of the airport. I flew into New Delhi. We connected from New York to Dubai to New Delhi. Going to the airport, I'm with a guy I worked with at the time who was from India, and we get into the car that comes to pick us up, and it's a 5-lane highway, but there's probably 7 or 8 lanes of cars. And it's just no one stopping, not in Pittsburgh. Like, if there's a rain or a tunnel, people slow down. Like, people were flying like crazy. And he tells me, never accidents here. Don't ever worry about anything. Like, this is just how people drive. As he says this, I see next to us a moped drive by us with 4 guys on it. the back of the guy holding a box, fly by. Drive 5 minutes down the road, there's a 30-car pileup. Not because of the moped, but just a whole separate incident. Not one person stopped to rubberneck.
Of course not.
We drove by like going 80 miles an hour. And I'm thinking like, this is how the other side of the world lives.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And we went down into New Delhi and they had these little kids coming up and begging. It's a racket. It's like the mafia there. They bring these kids up to beg for money, and they have these like pimps that take these little kids and make them, and it broke my heart.
Of course
and
it did.
it made me appreciate this country so much
They
more.
defecate in holes on the side of the
It's
road
ridiculous.
like it's just
And
commonplace.
I remember going to Israel and walking around in Jerusalem, seeing there was this 18-year-old girl sitting down on the side of the road with her M16 next to her, painting her toenails. I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck is this? But it's like they're in the military. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, that would be like my son or my daughter in a few years.
Right.
And it just makes you so thankful for where we live. And I just wish people would look outside of the 5 feet in front of them and see what the world really is like, and understand that we don't have it too bad here.
No, the problem I think it is there's elements in society to make it too goddamn easy.
Yeah, right.
To be an American.
Yes. Yes.
And to just exist.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And we talked a little bit about before, there's all kinds of political avenues we could go for another day, but there's, we have a right, you have certain inalienable rights if you're born in this country.
Yes.
But we have so many rights, and we have a government that's so willing to just give out and give and give and give. Is society too damn easy now, where that drive...
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. It's not funny. And I'm sure all of us at some point in time have seen the following.
Yeah.
It's going to sound harsh, but that's what we do here.
I like harsh.
In a line, pick Walmart. It's happened multiple times in my life, and the person in front of me has got an iPhone and probably has a purse that is worth more than, and fancy shoes, and all the makeup's done and a whole bit, paying with an EBT card as they're not paying attention, treating the checkout person terribly, and all of us waiting behind because that person's checking on their $1,100 iPhone.
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with us?
Yeah.
Like, really, what is wrong with society? That we're giving government benefits to a human being who has all their priorities, obviously, in the wrong place.
Yep. That's
How are they raising their kids? If that's who you are as a person, what's your house look like? What's your apartment? What does your car look like? What does your children's well-being look like? Come on, we're better than that.
That's the problem.
We're better than that.
100%, and that's the perpetual cycle we get in. I mean, we own rental properties, and some of the properties we had in the past, you'd have these people that have the best of everything. You'd walk in the house, they'd have big screen TVs, PlayStation, Xbox, but yet they were 3 months behind in rent. I'm thinking to myself, the rent's like $450. Like, that Xbox is that much. Like, what the fuck is going on here? And that's the problem. Like, we've made it, you're right, like, too easy in society. And then I think people have gotten this expectation of entitlement. I believe in this country, we're entitled to equal opportunity, not equality.
Nope.
Like, and this is, and I'm not talking about like
equality
men or women.
Equality of outcome.
Yeah, equality. I'm not talking about like racial or sexual. It's
equality of outcome.
That's exactly right. And thank you for clarifying. But that's, people think, I'm like, I'll pay you $100,000 if you show me you're worth $100,000. I'm not going to pay you $100,000 because you have a degree and you think you deserve it. Show me you're worth it. Like, it took me 20 years to get where I am.
Right.
Busting my ass, working 7 days a week, which I still do, but I love what I do. I feel very blessed and fortunate to be able to do what I do. But I put in the work. No one handed it to me. And people think that if that person has it, I should have it too, but they don't want to do the same amount of work.
Well, where did that come from? Is that something that, I mean, because, was it around 300 years ago? Was envy such a big thing 300 years ago? There were still those people floating around in society that felt entitled to have that musket rifle that this other guy has. I don't know.
I don't know. That's a good question. Like,
how did it? Or did we just get things easier? I mean, because I don't want to rewrite it as a new fallacy in society. If really that mindset's always kind of been around. I don't know.
I don't either. But I think it's gotten worse today. And it's, I look at people that are successful. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, I want everybody to be successful. I want everybody around me, my friends, my family.
Why aren't
the
people intrigued on how they did it, Rocco? Like, because that fascinates me. Like, why wouldn't other people that are having trouble, instead of saying, I want that car that he has, how did he get it? Maybe you could earn 5 of them if you figured it out.
Yeah, because that takes work. That takes effort. And we've become sissified as a society. We don't want to do the work. Because look, what I do, what you do, like, this seems cool. Like, people will watch this like, oh, that's awesome. But a lot of the shit I do is boring. It takes effort. Like, I'll be in my office tomorrow, which is a Saturday, doing work for clients that is not glamorous. It's reviewing contracts and writing contracts.
It's a choice.
But it's a choice. If I want to live the life I live, I have to put in that effort. And people want the outcome without the effort. And we've got to understand that to get the outcome, you have to put in the effort.
Why do we have to explain that to people? That's the most
I don't know.
elementary fucking concept imaginable. Yet there are people that really need to have that. Politicians are avoiding talking about that.
Yeah. Yes, I know. I don't understand. And it's part of it is because, like you said, the government does make things easy. They incentivize people. They give them benefits. They give them all these things to just kind of exist. I'd rather the government put programs in place that encourages everyone to be successful. And the more you succeed, the more will help.
To provide even more opportunity as opposed to just making it easy to exist.
Yes, because I believe in this country, you can succeed. If you put in, it might not be, some people may have it easier than others, right? But if you really,
the luck of the draw, where you were born,
right?
We can't control that.
No, I can't control where I was born, how I was born, any of that stuff. But if you put in the work and the effort and you just don't quit, it's not that hard to be successful. It's just most people don't like all the shit that comes with it.
Are we avoiding pain?
Yes, absolutely. That's the biggest thing. Because think about how much pain, not pain, but just how much stress and struggle it's taken you to get where you are in real estate after all of these years. Like me as a lawyer to get to a firm where I have 3 people working for me now. That's a lot of struggle and a lot of, pain. And it sucked for a while. Like, I had to go through it. It was like, holy shit, where's the money coming from? Like, how am I going to, pay all the bills this month? But you just keep pushing through. And I feel like if you just push forward, you'll get there. But people tend to quit on the 20-yard line. Because that last 20 yards is the fucking hardest. And it's so hard and it's so painful. But that's what separates the good from the great.
Okay.
And people just don't, that last 20 yards, people just like, fuck it, I'm going to go home. I'm going to do something else.
I've done enough.
Yeah, I've done enough. Exactly. And that's where the magic happens in those 20 yards. That's what makes you successful.
And shame on humans, too, because we've got so many great examples around us of people that worked hard, did amazing things, and some of them were exceptional and did exceptional things.
Absolutely.
It's all around you.
Yes.
Yet some of society choose to either use envy or whatever. They just don't want to go there. And I don't like that word laziness because it's cruel, but man, I can't think of another word to describe it, man.
Yeah, it's hard. There isn't a word. And it's, I look at people and I say, if that person can do it, why can't I? That's kind of how I view the world, right? If that person has become successful and built a firm or built a business to multi-million dollars, why can't I do that? Like I just got to put in the work. I got to figure it out. And that's the hard part, right? It's putting the puzzle together, solving the problem. If I want to go from, $500,000 a year to $5 million a year, I have to become the person that can make $5 million a year.
Right.
I also got to solve the problems to get me there. That's just a lot of fucking hard work. And people don't like it. And it's not everybody's cut that way. I get that. Some people are just happy being content with where they are. But that's okay as long as you say that you're okay with that. But it's the people that are envious and jealous of other people and try and put them down but don't want to put in the effort to do it. That's what I have a problem with.
We're drunk on trinkets. And I say trinkets, people this is how caustic society is. I once described this in an essay, and people would say, well, I don't think anyone's buying their kids trinkets, ha, ha, ha. And multiple people would say that. there's an example of just how reactionary we are, that they didn't even understand the metaphor of what the word trinket even means. Right. They're thinking of Aladdin and shit, right? I mean, like, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah. Meaning we're drunk on like, I won't say name brands, but we're just drunk on this like ridiculous illusion of what like these pop stars are. Because you get a pop star who got a big chain around his neck that with diamonds, or they're driving a Bentley, and we look at those things as a society, and it goes beyond lust. We almost feel like, well, I'm going to do that. Mm-hmm. Well, that's great if you really are honest about trying to. If that's a goal, God bless you.
Yeah, right.
But you got to put a plan together.
Right.
It isn't going to magically happen. Yet we feel entitled that if The Rock can live that way, then I should be able to live that way too, because I can maybe comment on his page and he might respond to me. You know, No, you're not. I'm sorry. You might be a nice person, good member of the family, member of the family, member of your house of worship. You might be a nice person. You're not The Rock.
No.
In this society, The Rock has greater capital societal weight than you because he's done things.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. And that's,
live with it, right?
But people see that on social media. They see these things, and they just think they should have them. And if they have them, it validates them. It validates their importance.
I don't get it, man.
Oh, I don't either. And I see people that, look, I like nice things. I will be honest. I like nice cars. I like nice watches. I will spend my money on that. But I also make sure I have the money to do that. If I was making $50,000 a year or $40,000 a year, I'm not going to buy a $10,000 watch or a $3,000 purse. Like, it's just not. It doesn't make fiscal sense, or it's not fiscally responsible. But people don't think that way. They're just living in the now. They're living in the moment, and that moment of getting that thing makes them feel good for that minute. Instead of thinking about, or to me, I look at it as like, if I want something, I'm going to put a plan in place to get it, so it really matters when I get it.
Yeah, it becomes a goal attainment.
Yeah, and people again, that it all comes back to the effort, right? Setting goals, like we talked about goal setting before. Putting a plan in place to achieve your goals. That's just hard work to do, and executing the plan's hard, and that's why people don't do it. So they just think, well, I can just buy it. I have a credit card, I'm going to buy it, and then they're putting themselves in this perpetual cycle of debt and these things that happen, and it's all to like impress people that don't really matter. Like, it really is when you think about it.
There's no question.
And I had to come to terms. Like, I'm sure when I was younger, like, I cared what people thought. And now I'm 43 years old. I don't really give a shit what people think of me. Like, I have my circle of friends, my colleagues, my clients, my family. Yep. And I want to be a good person. I want to try and live the right way. I make mistakes. I do the wrong things, but I don't really care what people think anymore.
Okay.
And I feel like once you do that, you become free.
There's no question. But my point is, what you just described was a metamorphosis for you, just going through your life and having success, and then looking at a broader picture, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You would think that based upon Corona and all the fear, whether justified or not, we'll see. But what we were all indoctrinated in, at least early on, is you think. My hope was that we would start looking inward a little more. Maybe there were going to be signs that maybe we'd be a little nicer of a person, wouldn't be quite as caustic. It's kind of gone the other. I don't know about materialism, but it's kind of gone the other direction in regards to the way we treat each other.
I agree completely. And I had this. I remember when we talked the first show, kind of after the social distance show we did. We talked a lot about that. About the there
was a hope there.
Yeah, there was a hope, and I think some people came out of this with a different perspective, but I think
I kind of did a little bit.
Yeah, I think we all did, but I think one, it's an election year, which is now super polarized and super, it's so divisive right now, and I think.
Does it really matter?
No, it doesn't. I mean, let's
to your life. Are you going to wake up any differently the day after the election, or the day they finally declare whoever wins?
No, and I've thought about that recently because it's an interesting thing because is it really going to make a difference?
It never really does.
I mean, taxes maybe a little bit, but you find a way to pay the most you have to legally, and. Am I really going to give a shit? Like, I'm still going to live my life. I'm still going to do the things I want to do. I'm still going to have my businesses. It's not like the world's going to end. And I think people get so caught up in it that if my team loses, we're fucked. And I'm sure I've said that out loud to people, and because there's those emotional times where where I have that like intense passion about something I'm talking about. But if I really just take a step back and look at it from a objective, logical perspective, my life's not going to change that much. Again, I may pay a little more in taxes. That's really about it. It's not going to be that big of a deal.
I've made money in Democratic administrations. I've made money in Republican. I've done certain good and bad things in my life in both. I don't think in the big picture, and I guess if you could actually sit a human being down who's real caustic and just say, look, take a breath and really think for a second. Does it really matter outside of your fundamental, staunch belief that you're making a difference, boistering or being boisterous and saying this stuff? Does it really matter?
It doesn't. I mean, I don't really. I mean, I don't think it does. Too. I mean, there are fundamental things that could change. So I will retract that statement slightly.
Okay.
So I do believe this presidential election can lead to two different types of America.
Okay.
I just think that, and I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but I do think that we're not necessarily electing a president. We're electing a vision for the country moving forward. Will either vision impact me that much? Not necessarily. But I believe in one vision over the other. And I would encourage people to just look at it not from an individual's perspective, not from the man running or the woman or man as the vice president. Look at the America you believe that administration will create. And that's really what you're voting for. It's about the country.
Okay, but to even play devil's advocate with you, even if that's true, does it really matter? And the reason I say that is everything seems the middle always wins.
Sure.
I think in the end, because if you get a left-leaning president, you'll somehow in 2 years start seeing a right dominant Congress. If you get a right-leaning president, the Congress will go right. It seems like it does even it out. There will always be landmark moments, and a Supreme Court nominee or some other landmark moment where things happen. But nothing really ever gets too far off kilter. I mean, we feel like we're off kilter because of all this Corona stuff, but that was nothing to do with our government.
Right.
Really. We don't think.
No.
But the decision seems to somehow get massaged and evened out. I remember when I was younger and Bill Clinton won in 92. And I remember Republican people would make an off-color comment, well, we haven't had a Republican or a Democratic president in so long, and when Carter was in, the taxes were so high and all that stuff. And if you go back, things weren't quite as bad as they're portrayed to be.
Sure.
Carter's legacy was made a lot worse in lore than it really ended up being, rationally speaking. But, Clinton was coming. And meanwhile, the country went into this amazing technological time where things just exploded, right? We weren't really worse off during the Clinton administration than we were in Bush 1. Matter of fact, Bush 1 had the recession. I mean, I don't think it always pans out that we're in this, bad circumstance.
No.
The middle kind of wins in the end.
Yeah, and I think the middle is the least impacted by either party, right? It's the
because
top
we're kind of indifferent,
right? Well, but when you think about it, it's the top and the bottom, right? If one party wins, the top pays a lot more. If the other party wins, the bottom doesn't benefit as much. And it's
okay. Good point.
The people in the middle, we're kind of like, we'll figure a way around it.
We always do.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. I have my views and I know who I want to vote for. But if the other side wins, so be it. I'm not going to go burn down a building and say this is bullshit.
We generally believed we wouldn't burn down a building. That's that whole lawlessness thing. That's
the other part, and that's why I talk about what is happening in this country right now. We really need to take a step back as a people and say, is this how we want our country, one, to be perceived, two, what's the vision going forward? And to blame the president for all this stuff, I think is just unintelligent, because it's not it takes more than one person to divide a country. I mean, this is the year of everything that could possibly go wrong has went wrong. When you think about it, you have a virus, you lock people in their house for 6 months, you have all these police things happen, you have all this stuff, and then what do you expect? People lost their shit. if I was locked in the house for 3 months and I was losing it, and think about people that, and I live in a nice house and I had plenty of things to do and I wasn't concerned about, my business was fine. But think about people that lost their jobs,
Right.
that were stuck in the house, that are being told different shit by the media. Their mind is completely fucked. They're going to lose their shit.
Great point.
Like, they're going to lose their shit.
Great point.
And it's not the president. It's not the Democrats or the Republicans causing this. In my opinion, it's the media.
Mm-hmm.
The media has stirred the pot.
Sure.
And the media has made this so terrible because they just...
It's entertainment to them.
That's it. And they feed shit to people, and then people don't know how to digest it. They don't know how to research it. They've already been locked down. They're already in this state of fight or flight all the time.
High anxiety.
Right. And then you put them out in the world, of course shit's going to happen. Of course. When you take that step back and put the politics aside and look at it from just human nature, people were going to lose their shit.
Yeah.
One way or another.
Right.
And it happened. Now we just need to right the ship. We need to say, okay, enough's enough. Let's all calm down. Let's solve the problems moving forward.
Right.
Let's be a society of civil people that are kind to one another.
Well, just decent.
That's it. Just decency. That's all I want. Like, I want to be able to walk down the street and smile at someone and have them smile back.
Don't you think before we wrap it up though, I want to get your thought on this, because I really believe that what we're being fed in the media is like getting a little look at, let's just say, over a course of a month, maybe 1/10,000th of the population over a period of a month doing bad things.
Yeah.
But we're labeling the country as a mess, and there's all this strife. And meanwhile, it's 1/10,000th of the population.
Yes.
The rest of us are out there just going shopping, doing our things, being nice to each other.
Yeah.
That's America.
Yes,
Not
I
that
agree.
freaking bullshit that we're being spoon-fed, where people are running through with torches and burning down small businesses and setting cars on fire. And I don't think our response as a country toward each other has been appropriate based upon, from a numerical standpoint. Doesn't make it bad or good.
Yeah.
Horrible things have happened, but the amount of horrible things have happened, we've blown them way out of proportion.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And that's what has you have these little pockets of shit happening that the media makes it seem like the entire world's burning. And it's like, that's not really the case. Like, and they, the Republicans always give shit to the Democrats for saying, well, mostly peaceful protests. And it's like, well, yeah, most of them are. There's also ones that aren't.
Right.
So we have to, the narrative isn't necessarily off by that much. The problem I have with that is we also have to address the rioting and the looting. And you're right, the media does. They take this one little thing and they make it seem so much worse than it is. And then they feed it to the people, and people just believe what the media says. And it causes
100%.
all this angst and anger and anxiety. And
100%.
that's where shit goes off the rails.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's a rational thinking human being in this country that doesn't think that any injustice by police we need to find a way to correct that problem.
Yes.
And we also need to find the law needs to work its way through.
Yes.
And we also, I would imagine, understand our right to protest, whether it's BLM or whether it's anything else. It was the Vietnam War. There was a lot of legitimate protests that happened. But we also, I think the same people would argue that lawlessness cannot be tolerated.
Oh, that's exactly right.
Bush said that after the LA riots in 92, and it was the strongest words that came out the night of the riots.
Yep.
I think Reginald Denny had been hit in the head with a brick.
Yep.
In response to who was a gentleman who was beaten up by the police? Rodney King, and that happened almost on live television, I think.
Yeah.
And then Denny got hit, and then that next, he just said lawlessness will not be tolerated. And I think, quite frankly, we had a president who'd done that, maybe he was afraid to do that. I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing. I feel like, take coronavirus out of this.
It would have been handled differently.
It would have been handled differently. But it was like, okay, well, there was so much other shit. Like, I couldn't imagine being a president in enduring what this man has endured.
Daily.
This impeachment, the Russia thing, coronavirus, burning and looting and rioting the country, all within a 3.5-year period.
Right.
Like, I'm surprised he hasn't died. Like, holy shit.
Well, they're trying to kill him.
I mean, it's just, but I mean, when
stress-wise, I believe that.
Think about it,
I believe it.
It's so yeah, there could have been, and I agree. Like, we have to fix the problems, but we cannot, we have laws for a reason, right? Mm-hmm. I went to law school to be a lawyer, to uphold the law, to help interpret the law and bring forth justice. I don't practice criminal law, but we have laws for a reason.
Yeah,
we need to enforce them, and people need to follow them. Typically, if you follow the law and abide by the law, you don't get into trouble.
No, life's generally pretty easy,
right?
Especially in this country.
But that, and this again always circles back to responsibility. Mm-hmm. We have to take responsibility. Like, if you break a law, there are consequences to that. Whether the consequence is right or wrong, that's a different discussion. But there's still a consequence. If I break a law, if I leave here and break a law, there's a consequence to that action. I don't know what that is, but there's a consequence. You have to understand that. Yeah. There's going to be something. Now, the consequence could be right or it could be wrong, and the courts will sort that out.
Right.
But we have to understand that we have to take responsibility for the other side of the argument as well.
I think, too, the other mistake that was made, that because there was episodes that sure on the face of it look terribly unfair, because the victims here were black.
Yeah.
That because of those circumstances does not mean that when we say lawlessness cannot happen, doesn't mean that we're saying that against black people. And I think there's arguments made oftentimes that there's a racial component there where America doesn't want lawlessness. We don't want lawlessness because you can't function as a society that way.
That's exactly
right. The race is irrelevant.
Right, race is irrelevant to laws.
That's not even in the conversation.
I completely agree.
I think there's political groups that want to attach a racial component to law and order, which is insane.
Right, and that's what's preventing us from having the bigger discussions, because we fear having those discussions because race is attached to it. That's what I believe, right? Like, I believe that a lot of people want to have these discussions of how to solve the problem and about responsibility, but there's those groups that always interject race into that discussion. So people that are of rational mind fear getting in those conversations for the backlash. And that's the problem we have right now, because you're right, law and order applies across the board. It's not about a race thing. It's not about a gender thing. It's not about, a gender identity thing. It's, if you break a law, regardless of whom you are, there's a consequence to it. And
it should be equal. The skin color shouldn't matter.
Exactly.
It has in certain circumstances. It has, and we need to fix that fucking problem.
Absolutely.
But you don't turn the entire system upside down.
Right.
Because you had injustices. We have 320 or 40 million people in this country. It's terrible that horrid thing happened. And it can be the spark of a cause for change. I'm on board. But you can't turn everything up fucking side down and let burning and you can't let things just go nuts.
No.
You
can't.
That's the most illogical argument I have ever heard in all the years I've been here, is to defund the police department.
Well,
I don't understand it.
I don't understand that. And like the incident that happened in Georgia, right, where the guy got shot in the Wendy's parking lot, they burned down the Wendy's. And I'm like, okay, well, that was an injustice, but why would you burn down the Wendy's? Like, what the fuck? Like that, what does that solve?
I don't know.
It doesn't solve a problem. And this is the problem. And because we've got so emotionally charged about these issues, we're not thinking logically. We're not setting forth, because defund the police, like, how are we going to do that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Who's going to police? Who's going to control the streets? Who's going to solve the problems?
You can't. That's even. I don't even like to even talk about it, because it's so absurd.
It's completely absurd.
It's an insult to my intelligence as a human being that you're going to tell me that you're going to defund the police department. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think
I don't get it.
No, and I think, and I'll give my good friend Sean credit for this. We had this discussion. He said, he's like, I don't think that's what it is.
Then don't say it then.
It's just bad marketing. Like, they chose the wrong word, and I agree with him. Like, I don't think they truly meant get rid of the cops.
I get it.
I think they meant we need to shift money around and do to
how about add more money?
Well, right. That's the thing. They should refund the police. Like, fund them more. And he made that statement, and I get what he's saying. Like, it was just bad marketing. That was the worst.
Well, if you make bad marketing and it's tearing the fucking country apart, then stop the goddamn goddamn marketing.
Well,
then.
right. Like that's the other thing.
I don't know. What's wrong with us?
That's what I don't understand. Like that's what the narrative has to change.
Do you think the good police people, the vast majority of cops in this country, are hearing that defund? Do you think they might be a little pissed off?
Well, that's exactly right.
Of course.
And I hate like people share this meme on social media about like Chris Rock said something like you know you can't, not every profession can have a bad apple. Like you can't have a pilot to say he's a bad apple. It's like, okay, but you have to understand the difference of the professions. Like a pilot is not putting his life on the line every single day, putting his life in danger in a me or you situation. A pilot gets on a plane and puts in some coordinates, and the plane pretty much flies itself now. Like, that's a totally elementary argument.
Absolutely.
And the people that are sharing it just don't understand.
Well, there's no critical thinking. They could get there mentally. They choose not to.
They choose not to. Like, oh, Chris Rock said it. He's a celebrity.
Yeah.
That matters. I'm going to follow that narrative.
I think it's an insult to my intelligence.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not offended. It's not worth me thinking about because it's an insult to my intelligence. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Why would I waste time?
Right.
Defund the police? Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, that's exactly it. They need to train them more. You know who Jocko Willink is.
I love Jocko. They'll call the police as soon as the person who writes that bill, whoever that bill gets written, to defund the police department, will be the first person to call the police the moment someone breaks into their property.
That's exactly right. Like my theory is like with all these okay, if you want to defund the police, how about we remove your security forces first and let's see how you like it. You want to shut down businesses? How about we stop your paychecks? Like, that's the shit that should have happened during all of this. Like, let's test it on you guys first, the ones at the top. Like, why is Congress still getting paid? Why are our state reps still getting paid?
Amen.
Why is our governor still getting paid when they can tell us to shut our businesses down?
Exactly right.
That's horseshit. Like, no, jump in the pool with the rest of us that are hurting. Like, do that and show us you're in it with us, and we can solve the problem together. But it's easy to sit up on your tower, collect your paycheck, and have your security force and talk down to the rest of us about your narrative. That's a crock of shit. Like, things have to change. We need to look at the world differently. We need to look at the world with a more empathetic viewpoint. And we need to figure out how do we solve these fucking problems that are happening in this country. Because if we don't figure this out over the next 5 years, this is not going to be America anymore. And that's the scary part. Like, I've got 3 kids. My son's a man now, and my 2 daughters that are going into this world. And I want to leave it better for them. And we've got to figure out how to do that. And that is a scary thought, that we are this divided as a country, and to blame it on one person, the president, just shows that you're not thinking thoroughly about what's going on. It's more than just one man. He's been in politics for 3 years. It's a systemic political government problem that we haven't figured out how to fix yet, and we got to do it fucking soon.
Yeah, I mean, I
sorry about my rant.
I can't say it any better than that. That's just, you were going to mention Jocko, right?
Yeah. So talking about the whole defund the police, I heard him on, I think
on
it was
Rogan. It was excellent. It was excellent.
I would encourage everybody to listen to that because it explained it so well. And to summarize it, he said, he was a Navy SEAL. Before they went out on any mission, they trained for 6 to 18 months. So everything became automatic. You didn't have to think. These police officers train for 8 weeks. Then they're put out in life or death situations, and they're operating off of fight or flight all the time. When you train for 6 to 18 months, according to him, that response is gone. It's muscle memory. It's automatic. You've done it 1,000 times. You know exactly what to do. We need to train police longer, put more money into it. I have a client of mine who set up a nonprofit to help with police training. And what he was telling me, which I didn't even know, is they're only required to train like an additional 10 or 12 hours a year.
Did not know that.
So he's trying to create this nonprofit to raise money to teach them non-lethal de-escalation techniques, which is awesome, right? But as part of that conversation, I had no idea that their recertification or they only train for maybe it was 2 or 3 days a year they do training. Think about that. They're in the field they train for 8 weeks, they get put out in the field, and they retrain a couple of days a year. Compared to the military, which you pretty much train all the time for small missions. And we're holding these police officers to this standard that we're not training them to the standard. And that's the problem. We need to fix that. Put more money to it. Put more training. Screen them better. Do a better job of training them and putting them out into the world.
Yeah, it's an incredible balance.
Yeah, it is.
but I would think in a country that's got this kind of collection of great minds that we can fix this.
We have to fix it. We have to.
We're able to.
Yeah, we 100%.
If we want to do it, we will do it.
Yes.
But my God, to in all honesty, the fact that you will frighten most of this country, especially young people, by telling them you're going to defund the police.
Yeah.
That means if someone breaks in our house, Daddy, who's going to come for us? Who's going to? That's what a child will ask their parents.
100%.
As they should.
Absolutely. It's the legitimate question.
What a stupid thing to put out there, man. And it I don't know where it got traction from. It's a wonderment to me that it got legs.
Yeah, and it's the lack of respect, and that's the problem too. We have, and not to knock the generation behind us or two generations behind us, but I do believe, at least in my experience with that generation, there is a fundamental lack of respect like we have for other individuals. I just think everybody gets a trophy generation.
Yeah,
I think there was a whole, there's a whole.
We created that though.
We did. I mean, we did, and it's unfortunate, and that's it's something that I think has caused a lot of the problems. It's people just don't have this respect for authority. Like I remember growing up, like I feared my parents, I feared my mom, like I feared
the neighbor down the street.
Oh my God! Like if the ball went in their yard, I'm like, fuck, I'm not going to that. Like that dude will kill me. Like if you saw a cop, like I wasn't even doing anything wrong, but I felt like I was doing something illegal. Like you just always felt like, oh shit, like what am I doing? If a cop was behind me in a car, I would drive 30 miles an hour.
I still feel the same way.
Like I respect the authority, like
without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, when I was driving here, I saw a cop. I'm like, oh shit! Like I looked at my speed immediately. Put both hands on the wheel. Like I'm gonna get arrested if I don't have 10 and 2 on the wheel.
Yeah,
it's just like, but that's how I was raised. You were raised to respect authority. Anytime I've been pulled over, I'm very respectful, and that's it. But we've
gotten away from that.
We've gotten away from just respect in general, not even for cops, but just in general. Like I see people treat waiters and waitresses in restaurants. I'm like, if you were my fucking kid, I would kick your ass. Like you treat people with respect and decency, and we need more of that. And
but how do we fix that? Like, is there anything seismic that we can do that would change?
I wish there was,
like
honestly.
A movement or something.
It comes, look, people will say the president has created this. I said, well, the president's one person.
Yeah.
God, it starts with the family. It starts with your.
Always starts with
you
family.
have to start there. Like all I can do right now is teach my kids how to treat people with respect, kindness, empathy, and decency. That's it. That's my sole goal, is to make sure my kids grow up to be better than I am. More decent than I am, more empathetic than I am, kinder than I am. And if we all took that responsibility as parents, as members of society, to influence others around us, that's how we change it. We can't expect one person, be it Joe Biden or Donald Trump, to become and unite the country.
Right.
We have to unite from within. That's what we have to do. We have to make a conscious effort and a conscious decision as people that we want to do what's right. We want to do what's better. We want to be better towards one another. If we all started doing that, we could make a seismic shift. We absolutely could. But the problem is it takes work, and people don't want to do it.
I mean, when we talk about work,
it does.
I don't know, is it work or just a shift? Just like instead of being an ignorant asshole, you decide to smile and the world will open for you.
But to the ignorant asshole, that's hard work to smile at people.
I don't get that.
I don't either. But they've been ingrained a certain way that they have that framework, those neural pathways already built in their head that's how they operate, right? Like you can just when I go to like certain stores, like I know certain cashiers, like I know my sole goal is to try and get them to smile at me, and I know have I ever been able to do it? No fucking way.
Really?
Because they're just wired to, they're just miserable there, and I'll be nice, I'll say nice things, I'll treat them, and it's just they're wired that way. And it takes a lot of work to reprogram that.
Wow.
And that's when I talk about hard work, because you're reprogramming your brain. There's books that talk about this, and we've programmed ourselves to look at the world a certain way, to treat people a certain way. You have to completely change that programming.
Dismissive.
You have to, and it's hard work to do. Like, I just think, I try and smile at people. I try and treat people with respect. I try and treat everybody with kindness. And am I perfect? No, but that's what I can do.
Yeah.
I don't know what else I can do to make a bigger impact. I'm just trying to make the impact, or make the ripples come out from me and impact those around me. That's all I can do.
Leading by example, I think is incredibly powerful. I don't believe that's dead. I mean, I've had an argument once where a gentleman told me he thought that whole idea of like what you learn from looking at elders when you were young, that whole thing's dead. No one does that anymore. I think we can do it. I just think we don't care to think about that anymore.
Well, I think maybe it's just not the popular thing to do. And the world lacks leaders right now. Like, that's the other thing. I think the problem is we lack a lot of leaders in this world.
Yeah.
I think people are afraid to lead because there's so much backlash for if you say the wrong thing, if you do the wrong thing, if you take the wrong position. Look at all the shit that's going on. You try and do one thing and it's wrong, you're the devil.
Right.
So people are afraid to step into leadership. They're afraid to step out of the shadows and lead because of the fear of consequences. I mean, if you look at Donald Trump, love him or hate him, he was a billionaire. He chose to go in the public office. He chose to change his life forever because I believe he truly cared about the country and wanted to do something. And that takes balls to do. And no matter what he's done, it's wrong. Like, literally, if you just look back at even this pandemic, everything he's done is wrong. Like, they tell him to shut down the country, he shuts down the country, and now the economy crashing is his fault. It's like, well, okay, you can't have it both ways. The economy was going to crash if you do that.
Right.
So we understood going in that's a consequence of that action.
Right.
But you can't blame him for that when everybody wanted to do that.
Right.
It wasn't his decision. Every governor, every state, every politician wanted to shut down the country, and we did it. And now it's his fault that we did it. Like, you can't have it both ways. And that's the problem. When you step into leadership, you put yourself on the firing range, and people are afraid of that. And it takes balls. It takes a strong will. It takes mental fortitude to be able to do that. And we lack that in this country.
Some of the greatest leaders I believe in this country are not in politics.
I agree.
I think they're
100%.
Whether it's business, whether it's philanthropy, whether it's working in social issues for the greater good, I think the strongest leadership is there. And unfortunately, it's good that it's there, but it isn't good that it doesn't go beyond that.
Yeah. No, I think that's the problem because, again, I mean, you have these people that are in the private sector that are fantastic leaders, and they don't want to go into politics because look what happened. Trump's the prime example of a private sector person that went into politics, and look what happened to him.
Right.
So if you expect that to happen again, we're probably not going to see it in our lifetime. We're not going to see another successful business person come in to leave their wealth and all they do behind to come in and try and fix America. I don't think we'll see it in our lifetime.
Well, I know one thing for sure. If we don't get term limits involved in some capacity in our federal government to start, we'll never see that.
No,
because new blood won't just come at any meaningful rate.
Absolutely. The term, I think we talked about this last time. Having term limits in Congress will allow people to take a pause from their business and come in and try and make a difference because they know they're only committing X amount of years.
Right.
Here people get sucked into the political sphere and they never leave. So they don't really have they don't really have a business outside of it because they just choose a life of politics. And to get somebody that's already built a successful business to then leave and try and be president or a substantial figure, it's gonna be hard to do because you're vilified when you do it by either side.
Before we wrap up, give me a prediction on what do you think? Where are we headed with this pandemic? I'm putting you on the spot, buddy.
Well, look, here's what I truly believe. I believe 80% of people have just fucking had it. They're over it. I believe that. I mean, I watch it when I think, every restaurant I've been to, every place I've been to, people are still wearing masks, but they're wearing masks because they were told to wear a mask, not because they believe it gives them protection. I can tell you that every restaurant I've been to, every single server or waiter I've spoken to takes the mask down to talk because you can't hear them, right? I was talking to someone else, the other day. I said, I go to Panera, I meet a client there. And, the plexiglass is up, everyone's wearing masks, but 20 people are touching the coffee things and no one's cleaning them. So it's really not about health anymore. It's about, let's do what we're told. And I think people are doing that, but I think we've got to learn to live with it. We cannot live like this. We cannot do what we're doing long term. It's never going to work. America's put up with enough. People are going to lose their shit. And then the whole thing with our governor, his
keeps on going, doesn't it?
And he just keeps fighting. And it's the Third Circuit just granted his stay of the order. But if you read the opinion from the lower court, it infuriated me. The testimony from his own people, they had no one with experience on those planning teams, with medical experience or infectious disease experience. They had no plans to remove all restrictions. It was just a complete clusterfuck. And I think more and more of that is becoming exposed, and the more that becomes exposed, the less people will tolerate. You're already seeing states open up. I think I just saw Tennessee remove their mask order, Missouri remove their mask order, Mississippi, Florida already had, and Tennessee lifted all their business restrictions. That's what it was. So they're already starting to say, we have to learn to live with it. We cannot shut down a country for a virus that, when you look at the statistics, it really only affects this part of the population. Like, my son had it. He had to come home and quarantine. He literally had a sniffle for 2 days.
Yeah.
But he had, he tested positive for coronavirus, and he had to quarantine. So it's like, we know what it is. We just need to get over it. And I think after the election, I don't think this was political at all. I mean, it is something. It's dangerous, but I think a lot of things will change after the election. That's what I believe.
Probably regardless of who wins.
Yeah, regardless of who wins, I think things will change. I think restrictions will be lifted. I do believe that, because I think people will just, right now, they're just doing it, the Democrats are doing it for their reasons. The Republicans are doing it for their reasons. And the status quo will not change prior to that election.
Okay.
And I think once the election is decided, maybe that's not till January, that's when things will change.
How's that night going to go? How's that voting by mail? Because I am a huge detractor of voting by mail, and I got all these friends of mine that are like, "Oh, the military's been doing it for years. Oh, you've been doing absentee ballots forever."
There's a difference.
Yes, there's a huge difference. Because those systems are figured out already.
Yeah.
The how we handle the voting for and I understand, given an implementation of 8 years or so, we could make voting by mail correct.
Sure.
But you just don't decide overnight you're going to go from a standard voting procedure to a vote by mail for everybody and make it work right away. No. It's not going to work.
No, it's not. It's not. And it's and that's what I hate when people get into the mail-in versus absentee. Like, it's the same thing. But no, it's not an absentee. I have to request it. It's sent directly to me, sealed. It's a certain process.
Yep.
Mail-in ballots are just a general ballot, and it's and I was talking about the meme earlier about Chris Rock. I also love the meme on the internet where it says, "Put $500 cash in an envelope and mail it to yourself." If you're willing to do that, then vote by mail. If you're not willing to do that, why the fuck would you vote by mail? And even though it's a meme, I'm like, that's a pretty good argument. Like,
it's a great argument. That's a great argument.
If you'd be willing to do that, then okay, vote by mail. I just think it's wrought for just not even fraud. Just, I know there's shit I don't get in the mail when people send me stuff. Like, there was a letter that because I have like the mail preview you get.
Yeah, I get that too.
There was a letter I was supposed to get 2 days ago. It came, I think, or 3 days ago. It came yesterday.
Right.
So it was lost for 2 days.
Right.
Even though it told me it was coming. I'm like, well, what the fuck?
Right.
So how are we going to do this? So I do think election night, we're not going to know.
No, which will be good. At least it'll be anticlimactic there.
Yeah, I think there's going to be...
But you're an attorney, though, so you can see what's ahead then.
Oh, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a Bush versus Gore all over again. I mean, I think, and that's why they're losing their shit over the Supreme Court justice.
Okay.
Because that's going to determine... The Supreme Court's going to determine the election, in my opinion. If it goes that deep and it's that close and the mail-in ballots matter that much and it's litigated, the Supreme Court will make the decision.
So it just seems crazy to me that we are able to go, even at the height of the pandemic, man. Walmart stayed open.
Yeah.
Home Depot stayed open.
Yeah.
Lowe's.
Yes. There's no logic.
Target.
Yes.
But they don't want people going to the... And it was funny. A friend of mine actually said to me, Rocco, he said, well, it's unfair that he has to take a day off and go down and vote. I'm like, are you effing kidding me? You're going to use that as a reason why mail-in ballots should be... Are you kidding me?
Right.
Really?
That's ridiculous.
Are you going to kick? You really?
That's ridiculous.
I mean, that's where you're grasping for straws because you believe in. Listen, I don't think that. How do I say this? I'm not discouraging voting by mail because I wanted to benefit one candidate or the other.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it, period, because I just think that it's wrought for fraud.
That's it. Yes, exactly.
End of story. And I think that if we've already been brave enough to put a mask on and go out and stand in line with other goofballs at Walmart,
right,
that we can go vote.
Well, and that's the thing. Like you're 100% right. There's no and I saw someone post something yesterday about flu shots. And they went somewhere and they were asked about flu shots. He said, "Well, I've been wearing a mask. Like, why do I need a flu shot? I thought masks, do they only protect against COVID and not the flu? Like, why do I need a flu shot if I'm wearing a mask all year?" And again, like, these are funny memes, but they actually have some, it makes you think. I'm like, well, yeah, like, why, if this is supposed to protect me, like, why the fuck is this, why do I need to do this? And it's in the mail-in ballots, it's like, if we can go to Walmart and Home Depot and Target in mass crowds, you can go to a voting booth.
I totally believe in my heart of hearts, and if you think that I lean one way or another by the statement, then that's on you. But I honestly believe the only reason to vote by mail right now and open it up to everybody is because there is always going to be an out for anyone that wants to do fraud. Will have another outlet to try to do it.
Yeah, agree.
That's all it isn't about keeping us safer.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not about voting integrity because we don't even ask for IDs anymore. So the whole integrity of the vote thing has never been on the table as far as I'm concerned. And until the day we demand IDs first, like you do for cigarettes and booze, and state assistance or government assistance, there'll never be voter integrity.
No.
But this is a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely, especially when our Supreme Court has allowed the votes to be counted 3 days after the election. And in that order, I believe it said there are times where the post office can miss a postmark, so we will always also count unpostmarked ballots received by that day. So think about that. Think about what that statement means. That means someone could literally ballot harvest a shit ton of unpostmarked ballots, deliver them, and they'll be counted. And that's 3 days after an election when Pennsylvania is the swing state in this election. Think about how easy this election can be manipulated one way or the other. Like, that's the scary shit that people aren't looking at. It's not about Trump or Biden. It's about it can be manipulated either way. By
bigger organizations at play.
Exactly.
That's what I believe.
Absolutely. Someone else can
they're
control
figureheads.
It.
They're figureheads.
That's it. And that's the thing. When it boils down to it, if people really think the president matters that much, they don't. It's Congress, and it's all the people behind Congress. That's what really matters, and people just don't want to do the research to understand that.
Well, it's just easier to pick a face and a person and just go with it.
It's 100% right.
Next time, it won't be so caustic.
No, this was a good
one. Not caustic
man.
Between us, but this was it's just ripe. This society's just ripe right now for venting, and I think that we need more rational thinkers.
We do. We really do.
People that want to extrapolate a little bit. I get feisty when I talk about the defund the police thing because it's just really that's something that hits at me hard because like you, ton of some police people, even in my family, my extended family, you feel for these people of all racial and gender and religious backgrounds. The police is a kaleidoscope of Americana.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, come on.
And to vilify them because of a few things that have happened, like you can't vilify an entire population of people or entire profession because of a few things.
Well, I'm sure your next visit will be right around election time here if I can yank him back in here
of course,
again.
Man.
But,
election recap show.
Yeah, oh God, could you only imagine? And I'm going to get Rocco on a couple panels too. We're working all the details here, but awesome. I got some really interesting ideas. But as always, thank you, my friend. Always a great time.
It's my pleasure, my friend.
All right.
Cool.
We are out.